We all know that a diabetes-friendly diet is absolutely key for keeping blood sugar in check. But here's something important to remember. Not all vegetables are created equal when it comes to safety. In fact, some everyday vegetables can actually cause blood glucose to spike, which can be risky for those managing diabetes. So, in this discussion, we're going to uncover 5 vegetables that might make diabetes and blood sugar management more challenging if you eat too much of them or aren't careful. 1. Potatoes, white and sweet. First up, let's talk about potatoes, and that includes both the white and sweet kinds. Now, potatoes are a common sight on many dinner plates, but if you're managing diabetes, they really do need a bit of careful thought. The main issue with potatoes? Well, it's their high carbohydrate content. This puts them squarely in the category of starchy vegetables. Just one medium-sized potato can deliver a pretty big hit of carbs, and those carbs turn directly into glucose in your bloodstream. Because of this, they can definitely cause a noticeable jump in blood sugar levels if you're not managing them carefully. To understand their impact a bit better, we can look at something called the glycemic index, or GI. White potatoes, especially if they're boiled or mashed, tend to have a high GI. This means they get digested and absorbed fast, causing a quick surge in blood glucose. Sweet potatoes, on the other hand, usually have a slightly lower GI compared to white potatoes, and they also bring more fiber and nutrients like vitamin A to the table. But it's important to remember they're still packed with carbohydrates and can have a significant effect on blood sugar, and how you cook them makes a big difference to their GI. For example, boiled sweet potatoes have a lower GI than baked ones. So what can you do? Well, portion control is absolutely key if you're including potatoes in a diet for diabetes. The American Diabetes Association often recommends keeping starchy vegetables to about a quarter of your plate. What does that look like? It could be a small baked potato. Think about the size of a computer mouse, or maybe half a cup of mashed potato. Choosing healthier ways to cook them can also help lessen those blood sugar spikes. It's much better to bake, roast, or boil them with the skin on. That skin adds extra fiber, you see, rather than frying them or mashing them up with lots of butter and cream. That fiber in the skin actually helps slow down how quickly glucose is absorbed. And there's a big difference when you compare processed potatoes to whole ones. Things like French fries, potato chips, and instant mashed potatoes, they often come with added fats, sodium, and fewer nutrients. Plus, their GI can be even higher because of all that processing. These types of potato products can lead to faster, higher blood sugar surges and don't offer much in the way of nutrition. So, if you're going to have potatoes, whole, roasted, or boiled ones, eaten in moderation and with the skin on, are definitely the better way to go. Another good tip is to pair potatoes with protein and non-starchy vegetables. This can help balance out your meal and slow down how quickly those carbs are absorbed, which means a more gradual rise in your blood sugar. If you understand these points, you can still enjoy potatoes carefully every now and then without throwing your diabetes management off track. 2. Corn. Next on our list is corn. You know, that sweet treat we often enjoy at summer barbecues or as a comforting side dish. Well, if you have diabetes, corn is another vegetable you'll want to be mindful of. That sweet taste? It's a pretty good indicator of its fairly high carbohydrate content. Now, corn does offer fiber, vitamins, and minerals, but it's still considered a starchy vegetable, much like potatoes and peas. Just a medium ear of corn, or about half a cup of kernels, packs in around 15 to 20 grams of carbohydrates, and that amount can definitely have a significant impact on blood sugar levels. Generally speaking, corn has a medium glycemic index, or GI, but this GI can change depending on the type of corn and how you prepare it. For example, sweet corn you eat right off the cob might affect you differently than corn that's been processed into cornmeal, or even more concerning, corn syrup. Corn syrup is a big issue in many processed foods because it can spike your blood sugar really quickly. Then you have canned or creamed corn, which often come with their own set of challenges. Canned corn might have extra sodium or sugars. And creamed corn? That usually has added fats, starches, and sugars, which bumps up its calorie and carbohydrate load, making it less ideal for managing blood sugar. These kinds of additions can take a fairly natural vegetable and turn it into something that causes a much bigger glucose response. So, what do the experts say about including corn in a diabetic diet? The big takeaways are portion control and pairing it thoughtfully with other foods. A typical recommended serving is about half an ear of corn or half a cup of kernels. It's also really important to eat corn as part of a balanced meal. If you pair it with lean proteins, healthy fats, and lots of non-starchy vegetables, that can help slow down how quickly your body absorbs the carbohydrates from the corn. This leads to a more gradual rise in blood sugar instead of a sharp spike. For instance, having some grilled chicken and a big salad with a small portion of corn is a much smarter approach than making corn the main source of carbohydrates in your meal. If you understand that corn is starchy and you're careful with portions and meal planning, you can still enjoy it from time to time. 3. Peas. All right, let's move on to peas. This includes green peas, snow peas, and sugar snap peas. We often hear about how good peas are for us, and it's true they offer fiber, protein, vitamins A and K, and antioxidants. But for those managing diabetes, it's important to know that peas, especially green peas, fall into the starchy vegetable category. What this means is they have more carbohydrates than non-starchy vegetables like broccoli or spinach. So if you eat a lot of them, they can definitely contribute to a rise in your blood sugar levels. Just to give you an idea, a half-cup serving of cooked green peas has about 10 to 15 grams of carbohydrates. That's similar to a small portion of other starchy foods. Now, peas do have a good amount of fiber, around 4 to 5 grams per half cup, and that fiber does help slow down glucose absorption. But you still need to factor in their total carbohydrate amount when planning your meals if you have diabetes. Also, how peas are prepared and the type of pea can change their impact. Take split pea soup, for example. Even though it's made from a legume, it can be very high in carbohydrates, particularly if you have a big bowl, or if it has added thickeners. Generally, fresh or frozen green peas that are simply cooked are a better choice than canned peas, as canned versions might have extra sodium or sugar. When you put peas side by side with non-starchy vegetables, you can really see the difference in carbohydrate density. A cup of spinach might only have a gram or two of net carbs, but a cup of peas has quite a bit more. That's why paying attention to serving sizes is so important. If you're counting carbs, a typical serving of peas is about half a cup. It's a good idea to actually measure your portions instead of just eating them freely. A great way to include peas is to make them part of a meal that also has lean protein and healthy fats. This can help lessen their effect on your blood sugar. For instance, adding a small portion of peas to a chicken stir-fry that's loaded with leafy greens is a much more balanced way to go than having a big side of peas with a main dish that's already high in carbs. So, while peas are nutritious, they do need the same careful thought as other starchy vegetables if you're managing diabetes effectively. 4. Carrots. Now let's talk about carrots. Carrots can sometimes be a bit confusing when it comes to diabetic diets. On one hand, they're fantastic, packed with beta-carotene, fiber, and other essential nutrients, making them a healthy choice overall. But on the other hand, they've sometimes been said to have a higher glycemic index, or GI, especially when they're cooked. This has naturally raised some concerns about how they might affect blood sugar levels. The truth is, the GI of raw carrots is pretty low, usually around 16 to 35. Cooked carrots can have a GI that ranges from about 32 to 49, which puts them in the low to medium category, depending on how they're cooked and which GI scale you're looking at. Often, when we talk about how carrots truly affect blood sugar, it's more helpful to look at something called glycemic load, or GL, rather than just the GI. Glycemic load considers the amount of carbohydrate in a typical serving. This gives us a more practical idea of how a food will actually affect blood glucose. And here's the good news about carrots. They're relatively low in carbohydrates. A medium raw carrot has only about 6 grams of carbs, and about 2 of those grams are fiber. So what this means is that even if cooked carrots have a medium GI because they don't have a lot of carbs to begin with, their glycemic load is low. You'd actually have to eat a whole lot of carrots to see a significant spike in your blood sugar. As with many foods, portion sizes and how you prepare them are really important. Eating carrots raw or just lightly steamed is generally the best way to go. Raw carrots keep more of their fiber intact, which means a slower release of sugars. If you overcook carrots, it can break down their structure, potentially making their sugars easier to access and slightly raising their GI. But even so, cooked carrots, when you eat them in reasonable amounts, say about half a cup as part of a larger meal, are unlikely to cause major blood sugar spikes for most people with diabetes. What's more important to watch out for is what the carrots are served with. For example, if you have carrots glazed with sugar, that's where the concern lies, not usually with the carrots on their own. So for most people, carrots can be a really valuable and safe addition to a diabetes-friendly diet. They offer great nutritional benefits without posing a big risk to blood sugar control, just as long as you keep those portions sensible. 5. Parsnips and beets. Fifth on our list, we have parsnips and beets. These are root vegetables that, much like carrots, offer nutritional pluses, but also need some careful thought if you're managing diabetes. Let's start with parsnips. They look a bit like pale carrots and have a sweet, earthy taste. They're actually higher in carbohydrates and calories than many non-starchy vegetables. Parsnips have a medium glycemic index, usually somewhere between 52 and 60, depending on how they're cooked. Just a half-cup serving of cooked parsnips can have around 12 to 15 grams of carbohydrates. Now, they are a good source of fiber, vitamin C, folate, and potassium. But because of that carbohydrate content, portion control is really key. Then we have beets, famous for their beautiful, vibrant color and earthy sweetness. Beets also generally have a medium glycemic index. It's often quoted around 61 for boiled beets. However, their glycemic load for a typical serving is actually low. This is because they don't have a huge amount of carbohydrates per serving, roughly 8 to 10 grams of carbs in a half cup of cooked beets. Beets are also rich in nitrates, which can be good for blood pressure, and they provide fiber and antioxidants. But that natural sweetness does come from sugars, and these can affect your blood glucose if you eat them in large quantities. It's also worth noting that pickled beets often have added sugar, and that can definitely increase their impact on your blood sugar. So when it comes to including parsnips and beets in a diabetic diet, it really all comes down to moderation and making sure they're part of a balanced intake. Eating too much of either can lead to higher blood sugar levels because of their carbohydrate content. But if you include them in smaller, controlled portions as part of a well-rounded meal, that can be perfectly fine and even good for you because of all the nutrients they offer. Safer ways to prepare them include roasting, steaming, or boiling, rather than frying them or coating them in sugary glazes. For example, adding a few slices of roasted parsnip or beet to a big salad that also has lean protein and healthy fats can bring flavor, nutrients, and variety to your meal without causing major disruptions to your blood sugar control. And, just like with other starchy vegetables, pairing them with foods that are high in fiber and protein can help lessen their glycemic effect. Being mindful about how you eat them means you can still enjoy these nutritious root vegetables. So, to wrap things up, while there's no doubt that vegetables are incredibly important for our overall health and are a key part of a balanced diet, if you have diabetes, it's wise to be a bit selective about both the types of vegetables you eat and how much of them you consume. Being aware of the difference between starchy and non-starchy vegetables and practicing moderation with your portions will allow you to enjoy a varied, nutritious, and safer diet that really supports stable blood sugar control. Did you find this information helpful? If so, please feel free to share it with your friends and family to help spread awareness about managing diabetes through diet. And for more expert tips on healthy eating and keeping your blood sugar in check, Why not subscribe to our newsletter or join in the discussion in the comments section below?